Hello, welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Tuesday, November the 3rd in the Memorial Arena in Victoria, BC. I'd like to start by thanking the volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack show. So I just want to start off talking a little bit about the federal election. Today is November the 3rd. Mr. Trudeau is going to announce his cabinet very shortly. Everybody's hoping for change. There have been some big opportunities for change. For example, the Liberals only got 40% of the popular vote. We didn't really vote for a Liberal majority government. So it'd be nice if Mr. Trudeau took that into account in, the next few months or even few weeks. I'd like to just mention one important issue that's happening right now. At the first caucus meeting of each of the parties, they are going to vote, and I'm talking about the MPs we elected, are going to vote, the Liberals as a group, the Conservatives as a group, etc., whether or not to take on some additional powers that will allow the MPs to exert more control over the party leader. And I think that's very, very important. It's getting no coverage in the media, and so none of us, including myself, really know what it's about. But it is about that. It is about reducing the power of the party leadership, and I think that's fundamentally important. And I always talk about how media operates, and one way they operate is the stories they don't tell us about, and another way they operate is the stories they do tell us about, which are often divisive. For example, the niqab issue that the media basically created out of thin air because that's what they wanted the country to focus on, and we did for a period of several days during the election. We didn't talk about genetically contaminated foods. We didn't talk about how corrupt our government has become. We didn't talk about climate change or the TPP. Those weren't, but the media controlled our election, I think. And if we want change, we've got to start moving forward in honest directions of democracy and media.
Yeah, Trudeau was planning on making his cabinet 50-50, 50% women, 50% men. This is huge in my view. I think it's one of the biggest things that he can do. It's going to change the whole complexion of how things go, Jack. And don't want to say women are more honest than men, but
think Christy Clark.
This is it. You can't generalize, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. So this is good. That the caucus vote that you're talking about for the how the members of each party can get rid of their leader, that's one thing that's coming up. They can actually, if they vote in favor of these changes, they could vote to get rid of their own leader, as they do in Australia and in Britain and other countries.
It's worth mentioning that in England and in Britain, the members of Parliament do have this power, and it gives them freedom because the leader doesn't dare club them the way our leaders do. Everybody is forced to vote by the leader as the leader tells them to vote. Well, he couldn't do that if they had the power to say, sorry, buddy, you're gone. Another one that's important
is that when somebody wants to run for a party, they apply to the party itself, not to the leader. And the party will have a committee that will sign the papers to allow a candidate. Again, this is big because we saw in the last election where candidates wanted to run for certain parties and probably were representing the party's constitution better than the leader. The leader didn't allow them to run. So these are really important changes, and they're good if they come about.
And if you want information about that, just Google Michael Chong, C-H-O-N-G. He's actually a Conservative MP who brought this forward, and Reform Bill, I think that's what it's called. And there's a little bit of information out there. Mm-hmm. Next.
Well, I brought a story, and it's hot off the press in the Times column. It's just today. It's in the opinion editors, the editor section. And what's the headline, Jack?
And I don't understand the headline, but
Read
it's
it anyway.
Merit is watchword with infrastructure grants.
So basically what David Anderson, ex-cabinet minister, Liberal cabinet minister, and ex-minister of the environment, is saying that when municipalities apply, or the capital regional districts in this case apply for funding, that they have to have merit for their project. And Mr. Anderson says that neither the Johnson Street Bridge project nor, more importantly, the sewage treatment applications, neither of those have been shown to have merit. Neither of those projects gave to the federal government what is standard is what's called a cost-benefit analysis. And he goes on to say that even though the government has repeatedly asked for a cost-benefit analysis on the sewage treatment system, nobody has provided one. So,
what?
I know. I know. I mean, this is a picture, Jack. I mean, we probably used a lot of adjectives about these guys, but, you know, it's really boneheaded. The CRD has got this plan. They've wasted $60 million. Every morning when I get up to brush my teeth, I can just think of the $60 million. What we could have done with $60 million, Jack, with, let's say, the homeless issue in this region.
You're absolutely right.
They just, and you know, they did flush it down the toilet, and it's a fair analogy.
But somebody got that money.
That's right.
And so that's the other side of the story.
A lot of the friends of the CRD. I have to tell you that. I think this whole deal is just a little too much of an insider situation, and the CRD is not accountable to the public. But what Mr. Anderson is saying is that, for instance, the CRD has never provided to a scientific review of the pollution in the Straits that's actually being created supposedly by this type of system we have right now, and
yes,
compare that to the impacts of the system that they're proposing. Like, they don't have that analysis. So we're talking some pretty elementary things that are missing here in this project, and you and I know, or we have our suspicions as to why they're not providing that. And one common sense thing is to say they just can't provide it, that they cannot justify these projects. And they just think they're just going to get away with it anyway.
And, you know, if Mr. Anderson said that about the Blue Bridge,
that's correct.
You know, I would agree. The Blue Bridge story is so amazing, and what's even more amazing is that the media has never really told that story, so the people of the city don't even know the story. You know, as usual, we get the picture that they want us to get. The first numbers that came in on the Blue Bridge were a repair. A repair was the recommended option put forward by the engineers for less than $10 million. That's what the original option was. And yet, somehow, years later, when we voted, we were given the story that it was going to be more expensive to repair the bridge than it was to build a new one, which is now up to $110 million, right? So there's another $100 million that's gone. Where's it gone to? The people of Victoria were misled by our own elected politicians.
And we've lost our rail bridge in the process.
And maybe that's the most important part of all.
As you say, you know, we're worse off because we don't have any option for light rail transit across that bridge.
Okay, so now, is that a series of unfortunate accidents, or is it a conspiracy, a plan carried out in order to have certain things take place? I mean, that's an important question. What do you think? Well,
you know, if things are accidents, there's statistics on how accidents happen. You do certain things and bad things can happen, you know, if you drink too much and all that. But in government, you know, if a decision was made one way or the other, it's about a 50-50 chance that it would be an accident for the good side. You know, it's just if you were just saying, well, on average, you know, if the guy over projected how much money was needed or was overcautious, But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to ever go that way. It's always an accident and it's always bad. So therefore, you have to, common sense tells you there's something else happening. And I mean, you know, you don't want to launch into hyperbole over this, but we are in a bad spot right now because they're trying to ram this down our throats still. They're still trying to ram the one big sewage treatment plant plan down our throats. It absolutely has no merits. And we're stuck with these guys because we can't get rid of them. The CRD is appointed. It's not even elected. They're making billion-dollar decisions right now, John.
Yeah.
On our behalf. That's going to our grandchildren will be paying this bill.
Yeah. So it's got to be the right decision. And I mean, I no longer have any idea what's going on. We should try to get somebody from the city or the CRD to come on the show and just talk about what's going on, just so we all know what's going on. I mean,
well, Vic Derman does a good job at that, and
yeah, that's true.
You know, and John does
somebody
an excellent
official
job.
from the technical side of it, and
John doesn't quite launch into the as much as I do, but really, you know, it's so ridiculous. Come on, like give us a break here. If they can't provide any of these cost-benefit analyses, you have to really step back at that point and say, wow. But then from there, if you said, okay, perhaps that some type of treatment may be better, that makes sense. What's that going to cost? And if you compare these distributed systems compared to these one massive sewage treatment plants, the costs are just nowhere near comparable. It's like a tenth.
But that's not the numbers we're getting, because CFAX has been reporting all week that Urban Systems, the company that was hired to do the analysis, came up with numbers, and the cheapest plant is one plant. And I still haven't heard if it's a secondary plant or a tertiary plant. But one plant is the cheapest. If they build two plants, it's more expensive, and if they build 4 or 7, it's more and more expensive. So that's the story. I mean, that's what people are hearing, over and over and over again on the news, on CFAX.
Yeah, you don't have to tell the truth in news or on the radio or anything. I mean, I'm expressing an opinion myself based upon what I know about this, but that just isn't true. I mean, we know that this is a massive boondoggle. It's gonna cost billions to operate after they build the darn thing. So I mean, it's just
such a big issue, and it's disappeared from the news. And we're not, the citizenry are not, I don't think, getting enough information to make decisions.
Well, time now is to act on that issue, because they're plowing ahead with it again.
Yeah. Somebody sent out a story by Paul Willocks. It was in the Tyee about what's going on with Christy Clark and the email deletions. And, that story is being downplayed, to me, like times 1,000. This is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, the government is breaking the law. Isn't there an RCMP investigation? Didn't the privacy commissioner go to the RCMP? And when you go to the RCMP, it's because you're saying the law has been broken, and she wants an investigation. Didn't that happen?
I don't think so. I've been trying to find that today, and I couldn't find any reference to any sort of investigation by the RCMP. Now, I may not have found it, but it's not apparent.
Wow.
So maybe there's something happening. We're just not seeing it in the media. There's always a chance of that. Right.
It's interesting. Like, why would the media cover this story the way they are? It's a huge story. The government is breaking the law, and in a very, very important way, or allegedly breaking the law, because they're not giving us, the people, the information of what's going on. I mean, how corrupt can you get? And the response from the media the next day after the story broke was basically Christy Clark saying, I've instructed everybody not to delete emails anymore. I mean, it's like the chief bank robber saying, yeah, we're not going to, and everybody says, oh, okay, that's
But it's
good.
in light of the crimes they're doing that they're hiding the crimes by not writing anything down. And that's what's really the big story, is that What are they hiding from us? Why does the
It's
process...
us, the people who pay their bill,
Why are they
their
hiding
wages.
from us how they're making these decisions or how they're not making decisions?
So the underlying question is, how have we gotten into a state where this kind of thing is allowed? And
Well,
there's nothing
Jack,
we can do.
Under the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act, or whatever they're calling it, it's harder to get information from the government now than ever before.
Of course, yeah, that was the
reason. It was better when there was no act whatsoever.
Yes.
We don't need that act. We should get rid of it.
Yes, and just make everything open.
Everything's public.
Yeah, who do they think they are to hide
They're
stuff
working
from
for
us?
The odd thing they could kind of, if it's time sensitive or they're hiring somebody or something, you don't have to know every last detail, but yeah, on pretty well everything else, it should be just public knowledge. Why not? And I think the Freedom of Information Act was really touted and really promoted by the so-called left wing and the liberals and all that. But really, it was a betrayal of us. The people that promoted that and got us on side basically lied to us.
Was it the NDP who brought in the...
It was brought in the early 80s, in 84 in British Columbia, which was...
Oh, that's way back. Socrates,
Vanderzam.
Yeah.
But it was discussed.
I thought it was
and
much
hashed out.
after that.
It was a worldwide thing. It was happening all over the world at that time. But it was under the guise of bringing us more information when they were hiding it from us, Jack. They were ripping us off in the classic, call it what it isn't act, because...
Yeah, right. Freedom of information.
Yeah, in fact, as Mehdi Najari calls it, the Freedom from Information Act.
So, I mean, the underlying tragedy is that this is our country now. Our governments, we saw it happen in Saanich less than a year ago with the spyware placed on the mayor's computer. I mean, that's huge, and yet the scary thing is there's nothing people can do. It's been a year now.
Seemingly.
Yeah, seemingly.
Well, the Saanich has also got a governance review going on right now. They wrote a very tricky question in the last ballot, the last election, saying should we review the governance of Saanich and all that. But if you look at what happened with that issue, with the spyware issue, the chief
administrative officer.
Well, COA,
CAO.
Chief Operating
Chief Administrative Officer. Yeah.
Well, the city manager
Exactly.
wrote a little report for them in which he said he exonerated them all, said there was nothing wrong, there was no wrongdoing, and everything is fine. And they published that on the 24th of June, last June, when everybody was planning on going on holidays, and it was just completely dropped. So that's how they get out of these things. They write themselves their own report. And if you look at their governance review, it's the same, they're doing the same thing. It's so closed, the parameters of the review is so narrow, it's being run by a consultant. The little committee that they're forming, I don't know how they're going to pick these people, but it's going to be some kind of gerrymandering. It's just another process that Saanich is going through. It's just another fake process like they did with their privacy issues.
Well, and the same thing happened, I think, in Victoria. It was the decision to allow this Bolsa Development on Pandora and Vancouver to go ahead. It was 6-3. It's a violation of the neighborhood on behalf of a development company from Vancouver whose only goal is to maximize its own profit.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with our city councils?
Well, you imagine the fantastic potential that site had for a city park, a gathering place for people other than Beacon Hill Park, but they could have really created more of an urban park setting there with more pavement and things like that. It would have been fantastic for the city. And what they've done is they've built walls around that. It's all privatized now. That block is now privately owned, not for the public to walk onto without without having to acknowledge that they're on private property. And it just flies in the face of what the city could be doing, to create community.
Yeah. And I don't know how you change the structure of governance so that the people, I mean, we elect these people to do what we want, but then they do what they want. And we have absolutely no ability to, I'll just give an example, going back to when I first got involved with city government here back in, it was around 1990. It was the water board. You know, our water comes from Souk Lake. And thanks to Mehdi Najari, who wrote a report on what was going on out there, which is our water lands, it became evident that our water board, our own CRD, was running a commercial logging operation in the land surrounding our water reservoir. They were going to destroy it. And it ended up with the citizens actually had to go to court, to the Supreme Court of BC, with our water board opposing them because the citizens wanted to stop the logging of our water reservoir. And the CRD actually went to court saying, no, we want to keep logging your water reservoir. So this is how crazy things get. And that was my introduction. So I know that anything is possible.
But that was a good news story, though, Jack, because the citizens did win. And there has been no more logging in our watershed.
Well, actually, the citizens did win, but of course the logging never really stops.
Really?
Well, that's one reason they expanded the reservoir. There was a lot of logging involved with that. Then they do for fires, you know, But I'm out of touch with that now. I actually don't know what's going on there. It's been years since I was involved in that issue. But that opened my eyes to the way this city really works. The media is a part of it, because they won't report the truth. The staff is a big part of it. The councillors, you know, you wonder sometimes if they know what's going on. And who can blame them? There's 100 issues.
Yeah.
They can't be on top of all of them.
Well, you know, they're all city councillors and they all got full-time, it's a full-time job really to do that. Then they're appointed to go onto the CRD board and do that other work.
Yep.
When in fact, I don't think they should be doing that at all. At least the CRD should be elected directly. And you don't have to be a city councillor to be on the CRD. Any citizen should be able to run for the CRD to become accountable to the people who vote for them.
Walter, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated, Jack.
Thanks for watching Citizens Forum this week.